Great countdown, Joey. Welcome to the work session for the Board of Mayor and Alderman, December 12th, 2023. We're going to call the roll. Alderman Barnhill.
Here.
Alderman Blanton. Here. Alderman Caesar.
Here.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Alderman Berger is on her way. Will be a few minutes late. Vice Mayor Brown.
Present.
Alderman Potts.
Present.
Alderman Baggett.
Present.
And the mayor is here also. Now's an opportunity for citizens to make comments. I have no speaker cards for this session, so we'll continue to move forward, and we'll go to the TDEC grant, City of Franklin Contract 2023-0399 for the preservation plan at Toussaint L'Ouverture Cemetery located at 820 Del Rio Pike. Mr. Stuckey.
Just a quick word of introduction. This is a exciting grant opportunity for us and working with the Toussaint L'Ouverture Cemetery and its preservation and maintenance long-term. But I want to make a couple introductions. You all know, of course, Lisa Clayton, our Parks Director. She has worked on this project, but also Emily Huffer, who's our preservation planner. And this is her first presentation to BOMA, to the board. So we want to welcome her in, and she's doing a great job in her relatively new role in preservation planner for the city. So I'll have them take it away, and glad to present this grant opportunity to you.
Thank you, Eric. So we are coming before you all to ask for your approval and the signature for the grant for the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. So we've been granted a $24,000 grant, and it's going to go toward the preservation plan for the Toussaint L'Ouverture Cemetery. And so we'll work with a consultant in identifying the needs of the cemetery and working with the group that owns the cemetery and just kind of identifying their needs and working through them, and then just kind of a short-term and long-term goals.
Go ahead, Alderman.
So is the $24,000 for the consulting or for consulting in some actual results or work afterwards? That sounded negative. I don't mean it that way.
No, not at all. It'll be a preservation plan for the overall cemetery. So we'll be working with a consultant. We've identified MTSU. So they've done studies on the cemetery before, and so now we'll get into a little bit more detail and really trying to look at maybe a 25-year plan.
Awesome.
So I think that'd be wonderful working with that nonprofit, and Emily's kind of headed up with that group, and so we're excited to kind of get this started, to engage the community, engage the nonprofit. You provide some funding for those that may not realize, we provide funding through our budget process for maintenance of the area, but it is a private cemetery and it's an active cemetery. So, but it is predominantly African American. So, to be able to bring kind of this to the forefront, I think we're excited about the project.
Yeah, I was out there, I guess, this summer. They were doing a cleanup, and you can see, I mean, just the trees alone, there was some overgrowth, but then there's just some stones and headstones that are just in such disrepair. You're almost scared where you're walking that you're dishonoring, what's underneath the ground. So it deserves some love, and I think the idea that it's private, I understand that, but it's families that are from here, and I think they should be honored for the Herculean task they've done to keep it active and preserved as much as they have been just through volunteers and their own efforts.
Well, and a couple years ago, the city did step up with a maintenance program, and I think we've seen significant improvement just in having that regular maintenance. This will help us take it to the next level, also better honor its historic presence in our community, and it's continuing a progression. It's still an active cemetery. We have burials there. It will transition, I think, in that time period as we think about that too. And so there's just a number of elements that this plan will help us prepare for.
And one of the things we even talked about that day is there's no signage, even from Del Rio. I mean, you've got the stone walls that enter, but it's kind of like the unknown cemetery. So to me, that's paramount. And if you want to tell your consultant and part of the plan, we need to make sure there's signage.
We do have an audio tour at Tucson.
Yep.
Anybody else? Nice job, first time, Emily. Okay, the next one is certificate of compliance for wine and grocery stores from MAPCO Express. at Liberty Pike. Any questions about that one? Seeing none, we'll go to item 3.
Change of
Great
ownership, right?
report.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Change of ownership. Consideration resolution 2023-78, resolution of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for the City of Franklin adopting budget goals for FY 2024 and 25.
Good evening again. I'll walk through this briefly. We did talk about this with our Budget and Finance Committee last Thursday, and this is also on your agenda for a vote tonight at the 7 o'clock meeting. Each year as we kick off the budget process, we set some goals for ourselves to help guide that process, and this is where we do that at the outset. And so I want to walk through some key components of that. Each year there are 3 components to those goals, though. Financial goals, non-financial goals, and then fiscal year specific goals. Those first 2, especially the financial goals, are somewhat evergreen. They are key elements that we want to make sure we hit and achieve each year through our budget. That includes things like a structurally balanced budget where ongoing revenues and ongoing expenses are in sync, that we are in compliance with the board-adopted policies around reserves and debt, and those key elements, all of which are rooted in our benchmarking against AAA bond-rated cities. And the fact that we are a AAA bond rating from both Moody's and Standard & Poor's puts us in a group of around 100 cities across the whole country. So that is a high bar, but one we are driven and proud to have achieved. So let me touch on the key things within the fiscal 25 budget that I think are particularly important. One element that will be intertwined with our budget this year is the update of the strategic plan. You all were part of a kickoff of that just last night to help start that process, and there'll be significant work over the next 4 months to work on those elements of updating that plan with a 10-year planning horizon, but specific deliverables, goals set for the 1 to 3 year timeframe as well, that the budget process will absolutely have a key link to. One of the other key elements is looking at and developing options for your review and consideration related to growth-related infrastructure investments and funding and financing strategies there. Of course, we have a well-developed impact fee system that has been in place for many years, how that continues to develop and evolve, as well as some of the other components that you all have talked about and have been brought up in some of our dialogue with the development community. And we are engaged in that dialogue and looking for their feedback on some other ideas that they might want to explore in partnership with the city, things like development districts and how a tax increment could possibly be applied to any of these. So working through that and understanding what those options are and helping that be part of our process this year. Looking, of course, we continue to look at strategies around affordable and workforce housing, how we as a city work to encourage that. Look at growth management strategies. The continued update of the growth plan and the urban growth boundaries will be a part of what we work on over this year. And then, sorry, just turned the wrong page. And then looking specifically again at how we support our team, updating our compensation plan. We did a complete comprehensive update just 2 years ago, but we know that is something we need to stay on and look at and make sure we remain highly competitive in that area. So we're looking at that both holistically and specific areas of concern. Expand and enhance our outreach and connection with our public as we engage the community, and of course be a strong competitive economic development location as we look at how we compete, not only in the state, but across the country, and do that in partnership with the state of Tennessee, Williamson County, and Williamson Inc., our economic development partners. Also be looking at long-term financing and funding strategies around our CIP update, what that looks like, and key elements that help us deliver on the projects that you have identified and how that plan evolves in that 10-year strategy for delivering on key infrastructure, particularly in the area of transportation, but also facilities and parks. So those are some key elements. There's a lot of other elements there as well. I'm glad to address if you have other questions, but this does help chart that course and those goals that we have as we develop a budget between now and when I would present it to you as a recommended budget in May of 2024, early May of 2024. So there'll be lots of work between then and meetings at Budget and Finance where each and every department will present their needs directly to the committee and share what their goals are and what their needs are as we move into the budget process. So I'll stop there and answer any questions you might have. Michael, anything else to add? Nope. All right.
Very good. Item 4, a discussion regarding the capital investment plan for parks and facilities.
So really, the next two items are aligned with each other. We're going to take you through the remaining group of our capital investment projects, present those to you for parks and facilities, and then we have done an initial review of the financial model applied to your approved projects as they stand now, and we'll update that and show you where we stand in terms of that, also compared to the items that have been submitted in this capital investment project submittal and update that we are in the midst of right now. So Paul and Lisa will take it away.
All right, thank you, Eric. We'll hit general services first because there's not a ton of projects. It's the same exact formation that we've done on the other presentations. Just talk about the scorecard, then look at the review of the unfunded projects, which is really one in general services. And then you guys can have a quick discussion and we can then move into parks. So the one funded project right now is the City Hall, which I know you've had extensive conversations about and still working through. I didn't plan to spend a tremendous amount of time on that one because you've discussed that extensively. The one project that you may not be familiar with is a South Salt storage facility. We believe we will have an opportunity to work with a developer to acquire excess land from TDOT to be able to get this land set up for us, to be able to one day potentially put a salt storage facility here. Right now, we have a salt storage facility at Liberty Park, and then we have another one out at Incinerator Road. So there's a tremendous amount of time that is spent driving back and forth to get salt during these weather events. And so we estimate this at about 1.35 million, and ideally we would get that land through TDOT. And so this is something we're currently working on, but it will take funding and board initiative if you'd like to proceed with that type of project. And that's the
Go
only
ahead,
project I plan
Alderman
to present in general services.
This is a city only, not city in conjunction with the state or interstate.
It's proposed as city only. I'm sure if the state wanted to partner, we could explore those options. It certainly would be convenient for them as well.
It's on Goose Creek and where?
It's at Old Peytonsville Road, where Old Peytonsville used to connect there by the Goose Creek Inn,
Is that where the MAPCO, the old gas
the
station?
old gas station. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Alderman Potts.
Thank you, sir. Quick question. So has this come about due to some insufficiencies that or pain points that we have had, or has this come about more so as an opportunity?
More so as an opportunity as we continue to grow in that city. I mean, they'd have to drive all the way to Liberty Park. The opportunity was there. We asked the question, and Mr. Grubb said he would love to have one in this area of the city long-term.
Yeah, we used to just have one salt facility out on Incinerator Road, and then we added one at Liberty Park, and that helped significantly. This in the south would be another addition, and yeah, less driving back and forth just to load up. You'd be closer to where you're doing the work. So it is more an opportunity than a deficiency, but it certainly make us more efficient overall.
Alderman Baggett.
How many, I'd be curious of average days per year that we deploy salt. Just, I mean, not right now, but I
Okay.
think as
Yeah, we
we
can look
continue,
into it.
just, I mean, I have no problem with this project, but, you know, just kind of curious how much we use the salt. But
Yeah.
you can just email me. We don't have
We
to.
can give you an overview of the volume we use. It obviously is weather dependent. There are
Right,
years that we
sure.
use it a lot, and there are years we use it very little. One of the things we've looked for new ways and more efficient ways to use that salt. We do brining as a pre-treatment, which stretches the salt supply and also does a better job of pre-treatment. So when weather comes, snow comes, the roads are in better shape. So we have done a number of things to help that work better. But it really just, it varies, and we have a good supply, and having multiple facilities does help us have a higher inventory of salt, should we need it.
Yes. All right, well, we're going to,
If this doesn't become a salt facility, is it to remain a greenfield or?
we would probably still try to acquire it or leave it as TDOT excess or leave it as TDOT right away, just for the potential future. But at this point, we're waiting for the developer to make the application to try to move forward with this.
Okay.
Keep rolling.
Yep. All right, we're going to move into parks as I pull it up, and I'm going to let Lisa go ahead. Yeah, you can just push it if you like.
Okay, thank you. So as we begin, this is the quality of life portion of the CIP projects. And so this is the feel-good stuff, but I'd like to preference a couple of things for you to think about as we go through the process. Is first, as within the department, and anytime you do a project, whether it's internal or capital, think about a couple of things. Think about first is there's a prioritization for citizens and residents. How are they going to utilize the facilities? How they're going to utilize those specific parks? Because our residents are first, in our opinion. And then you have to balance that with tourism. So at the second part of that equation is, from a tourism standpoint, how does the visitor utilize those spaces? Is there a potential for revenue opportunity within the city, or is there an impact when they do come in that they're able to accommodate? So think about that in two different ways, because sometimes that when you're thinking about the prioritization, those things need to come in mind because we are heavily tourism facilities, but our residents are here every day. There's three areas in which I want you to also think about the themes in which you have before you tonight in the Parks and Recreation capital projects. First is your recreation. Think about it from that standpoint. You might think about it sports, you might think about fitness, you might think about the way someone might bring a book out and read it at Pinkerton Park or play on a playground. It's a recreational standpoint, so you're going to see those themes. Then the second part will be preservation. You'll see that in land acquisition. You'll see that in preservation of historical structures within the existing park system that we already own. And then thirdly, you'll look at trails. This is your connectivity. Paul in engineering does a fantastic job of the multi-use path systems, but in parks, we're looking at off-road. So your creeks, the river, any corridors that we might be. And it's not just about connecting to one place to another and from one park to another. It's really connecting everything. And sometimes it's connecting just back to a sidewalk. So think about your full infrastructure as you have that. The third thing, and I can't remember if Paul did it or Eric or Michael had a great idea, or Mark. It was a category we did 10 years ago called opportunities. And since I can't remember, I'm going to take credit. It was a fabulous idea. And but it's called opportunities. And what that meant was there was an opportunity. It may not be placed in the funding model that you start off with, but within that 10 years, is there an opportunity to have public-private partnerships, sponsorships, donations, maybe to where someone's able to come in, it might be a 50-50 split. Let me give you an example that made the list last time, was the historic Hayes Home. That is currently under construction. It's not about the city that some other entity's paying 100%, but if you're able to have those opportunities, what that does, if your prioritization brings it back to staff and you say that that's important to you, then that's what we concentrate on with those groups. But if it doesn't make the list, it doesn't mean that y'all are always gracious to let us come before you. But if it's not on the list, it makes it a little harder to say this should jump in front of other CIP projects. So think about that as you go through the projects, not just here, but as you see other things as well. But opportunities, and I'll bring those to you, Kate, into that. Thank you. With that, as I told Paul tonight, I found, of course, when you look at something so much, you do find a mistake. And so I did find that, and I'll bring it to your attention when I come to that area. You'll see the same template that we've all used of looking at the current projects and that type thing, and so we'll bring that to your attention. In the parks area, you've got 23 projects at around $162 million. As Ms. Ann has always said, Alderman Peterson says, you got more worthy projects than you have money. And so we're going to discuss what we have existing, what potentially could be, and then, again, there's the reason we have potential for opportunities in the future. Again, this is the quality of life section that we're discussing tonight. And let me share with you a little bit about the scorecard. These are the projects that you approved for those that were here and that we continue to work upon. And we work hand in hand with our city colleagues on these. 2 of these projects have been fully completed. It's Eastern Flank Road. That was the resurfacing of that road with the West Tennessee mix. That's what you see in all of our historical parks. Franklin Special School District, that is a special place if you have not seen that. That was a basically that partnership with the school system. That was a 50-50, and you will see that continue, hopefully. Then there is we utilize the same wording as we used 10 years ago, so let me bring it kind of up to speed as we change. This is the Harlansdale Pedestrian Bridge, which is next. So it is currently, I would say, around 80 to 85% complete. The goal is to complete that project in May of 2024. And so a lot of excitement, a lot of connectivity, and you're going to see some wonderful things for how that particular project and Franklin Road are going to work together. Bicentennial Park is currently under construction, if I can just say yay. So I don't care if it's just dirt every day, but dirt is moving. So
I feel your pain because it's similar to McEwen.
yes, thank you, thank you.
How long have I been here?
Yes, ma'am.
That's
Absolutely.
been the topic every year.
Thompson Alley was one of the FEMA properties. Back in 2010, we took 7 properties. Alderman Peterson and Alderman Moore were very influential in this particular project. We are 90% complete on this project. So in early 2024, we'll be coming back and doing a little bit of ribbon cutting out there. So excited for you to see that. We did a full master plan internally with that neighborhood. And so you're going to be, I'm really excited about that and the diversity it brings to our park system. The Hayes Home under construction, thank you to Friends of Franklin Parks, but they are around 80% complete. They're hoped to be fully complete in our portion as far as that project on the grounds and infrastructure by spring of 2024. Lockwood Glen Dam, which is known as Robertson Lake, and then Southeast Park. So as you know, that we bid that project originally it was in less than equal terms, it was sky high, so we've come back to rebid that project. We will be going parallel with those projects the first of the year to bid both of those. And then once those bids come in, we will go to construction in 2024 with Southeast, which we're very excited about, and we will come back to you to help make decisions on Robertson Lake. And for those combined efforts, that's 233 acres that we're talking about. Harlansdale's 199. So that is a massive amount of property. And we've enjoyed also working with Michelle's group for what's coming there for the clean water facility. The main barn, we will be bidding. That release is Sunday. And so yay for that one. Yay. That is a huge win. So it's taken quite a while. There's a lot of hoops when you are on the National Register. You have conservation easements, and we just, as a city, have really high standards. But it is going to be a fantastic facility. Liberty Park, we are in the final stages of design there. It has gone before our review team with the city, and then we will finalize the bid documents in early 2024, and you'll be hearing about the second phase of that tonight. And the last 2 are trail projects. One is Matt Catcher to Aspen Grove, which connects Aspen Grove Park to Matt Catcher, the multipurpose pathway, and the other is Pinkerton Park Bridge. Those have not moved along as further. We've run into a little bit of whether the bridge replacement at Franklin Road or in Franklin Road project itself, but also that there's been a couple of private developments that have continued on the project with the Greenway at Aspen Grove to Matt Catcher. So some of that is being constructed by private development. So we've kind of held off and see where do we need to come in at the end. So those 2 projects are underway as far as still believing that they are very important. The next project is Southeast. This will be the phase 2 of this project. Again, we will bid this project. It will take 2.5 years for construction, but these are the 4 remaining turf fields, parking trays, additional trails. There'll be over 4 miles of trails along this property, also connecting to Robertson Lake area. There will be recreational courts. In the master plan, it had pickleball courts. We're going to have to see if that's going to come to fruition, but at least basketball or some type of recreation. We won't be able to do leagues on that site, but and then outdoor fitness area. We do have room where we're building LG Stream World. We left quite a large site to allow for outdoor fitness, and that will come next, and potentially for some grants there.
Is the splash pad still included in this phase 2?
Not yet. Not yet. Yeah. The reason the splash pad, and let me introduce that, what we have found out from other parks and recreation, when you have athletic such as football taking place, the children enjoy running through those splash pads, even with pads on and helmets, and it becomes a little bit of an issue. So we've combined, so they have asked us, will you consider maybe moving it to another section? So we haven't ruled it out, but we might consider looking at another park area, in which I'll bring that up later. Thank you for asking. This is Liberty Park. Very excited about the project that will be in the first phase. This is second phase. And if I may, and I don't know if this will show up on the screen. It does. So you have in the master plan, there was tennis courts and pickleball. What's going in? This park is 85 acres. We are building the multi-purpose field here. We're doing farmers market this first phase. We're doing some parking trays, pavilions. This next phase includes pickleball. What was proposed in the master plan and what's on this master plan here are 4 tennis courts and pickleball courts. What we're seeing that it's not enough tennis courts, and let's do more pickleball courts. So if you can do to where there's 6 to 8, or even if the size allows for 10 pickleball courts, now you're able to do some leagues. Now you're able to do something special. If not, it's all just recreation. And it doesn't mean it's recreation for tourism recreation. It's just local. So let's take a look at revamping that master plan, but this would be redesigning that, adding some additional parking trays to the disc golf and mountain biking. The pump track, a lot of people ask me what a pump track is. So if you've never rode the mountain biking trails, basically it kind of gets you ready for that. It's kind of like a mini little skate park, but it doesn't have to be concrete. And so if you're trying to learn how to navigate along the trail systems and some ramps, this is a great way that we have room on the property to be able to build something unique, but it also prepares you for mountain biking. Additional restrooms and walking trails. One of the things that's on the walking trail here is the trail system and the multi-purpose trail system that would lead down, what's the roadway? I just lost the blank. For two Publix. Oxford Glen. Yes, thank you. So Oxford Glen. So making sure that that's added into, and that's a joint project between the two of us.
Sure, go ahead, Alden.
So you're talking about that right-of-way that we own, the Old Liberty Pike?
Old Liberty Pike, but also down Oxford Glen to where it would connect from the roundabout, connect all the way to Publix, because you've got some sidewalks, but it would also connect you to the back of the park.
Right. Because I want to make sure that we utilize that old roadway that we own and from Mr. Lancaster's property that's for sale. It would be ideal to extend our park over there, people. It'd be great, but I don't know price-wise right now how that's going. It was really high, so I just placed on the market. But if it doesn't, anything happen to it, maybe we should keep our eye on that, because that's ideal to extend the park and complete the park, but to make sure that we have that access on Old Liberty Pike when we close that up, when we did McEwen. And it was the old McEwen there.
It was.
Actually, not Old Liberty, I'm sorry.
Old McEwen.
I'm sorry, I'm saying Old
I
Liberty.
was following you completely.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yes.
Long ago.
Long time
Yeah.
ago. So I'm back in the dark ages. So
We've just all
yeah.
worked here.
Former
all the time.
McEwen.
It was the old McEwen. I used to drive down, and my husband would say, "Get off that road! Get off that road!" So anyway, but that also I want to make the point that if we could extend that right away that we own, it's going to be going behind the area where the Parks Company is going to build. we can extend that across the roundabout into the new 12-foot multimodal path that goes all the way to Wilson Pike, and then we can pick that up and get it to the school.
Absolutely. Paul and I are in agreement that there's a lot of connections in this area as things are being constructed and that type of thing. So seeing those opportunities and tying plans together, not just to one CIP project, but also to another. So thank you.
And also, as you said, up Oxford Glen, because as I said many times, we have people, and I don't know why they do this, who are running or have the baby carriages, strollers, that they're pushing, running or walking, and sometimes walking, but they have to walk on that road, and it's a hill and a curve, and there's no place for them to go, and it's a constant thing. And once parks start to develop down there, a lot of these people, Garden Club Estates, McKay's Mill, and around, are going to want to be down there, and we've got to get them down that hill. And I think we said on the west side of Oxford Glen is where that can be put. And that's owned, by the way, FYI, one more thing. That is owned by Garden Club Estates, and they want to work with us to possibly do that right away and let them have part of that, let us have part of that.
Absolutely. So thank
Okay.
you and your help with a lot of that in that area. So absolutely. This is Chestnut Bend. As you know, that we're putting the pedestrian bridge is going in across Harlansdale, and it'll connect. As the city, we actually maintain this. We have an agreement with Chestnut Bend now. The trail system was built in 2000. So we've definitely hit the lifespan. And so looking at doing the improvements for the erosion control, improving this for pedestrians would be great. But as we have new, we also have to take care of what we have. And this is one of those projects. Bicentennial. So as you know, Bicentennial is under construction. We said we'd be bringing the parking trays back to you for consideration. The reason it did not make the original, we had to work through the zoning part. And now that we allow for Civic Institution to be in the floodway, this would add an additional 52 hard parking spaces. We are doing the grading as the project right now, but the existing site has around 56 parking spaces. So this would add close to 200 in the downtown area. You could utilize this if there was private areas, such as from the hotels or other private parties. You could charge for this parking at some point in time. As we do, we're allowed to do that for Harlansdale. So we have that in other areas. That's not unique. But think about the Christmas tree lighting, and we just need parking. So this would provide that opportunity there. Any comments on that? Okay.
Well, it's an
It's part of your
unfunded project.
CIP. It's under,
Well,
all
the
of these
parking
are
is,
just,
yeah.
yeah, the parking is.
Well, may I say something about that, too? I just noticed over the Christmas tree lighting and Dickens, we've got to solve some problems here with parking. And we've got to get the people out of the core. It's just too heavy. And so anything we can do to move up the parking facilities nearby, and maybe also talk, another thing, I've got an idea, but I'll talk about that later, it doesn't pertain to this.
Okay.
And that issue came up today in our transit, our TMA group meeting. You know, they're very well aware of it, and if transit can't get there, that's a problem. So, yeah, the congestion is,
We need to keep the people out of the core as much as possible.
go ahead, please.
And the next project you see is what's known as Creekside Property Acquisition. Eric, would you mind giving an update of?
Well, the board's going to vote on it tonight. And this number under what's proposed before you tonight, would move that number to a $7 million investment for the city to acquire around 76 acres of parkland. So that would put you around $92,000 an acre to acquire that land. And of course, it's phase one is acquiring the east side properties. Phase two would be acquiring the corner of Mac Hatcher and Franklin Road and then swapping that for 33 acres adjacent to Harlansdale and connecting to our existing 53 acres, really creating a northern extension or expansion of Harlansdale. So this would be a total of $7 million to acquire that land. Then we would need to go into a longer-term master planning process to identify the best way to use that property, short-term, long-term, et cetera. So that's what's before you tonight, and something we've been working on since really the better part of this year. So
Thank you. So part of that master planning is, I want you to,
Yeah.
oh, excuse me.
So acquire 2, swap for 4?
yeah, you'd acquire
Acquire
4
4,
and
swap
swap
2.
it for 2
Okay.
with the church. Yeah. And the way we've written the agreement for you tonight is phase 1 would be properties 5 and 6 on this map. And that would happen regardless of the deal with the church. And then the church would have a decision to make end of this year, first part of next, regarding the swap. So we know that their board of trustees has favorably moved it on to the next step of their process, but that would need to happen the first quarter of next year.
Thank you. So part of this particular project when you're doing a master plan, I want you to also think about an offsite. So we need to connect Roper's Knob to this historical site as well. To be able to connect Harlansdale, and now we're connected through trails all the way to Roper's Knob, but also the acquisition for something to where we can look at maybe some small parking for that structure, for that park. So remember that when you're thinking about this particular project and the master planning process. The next project, we're going to go back to Harlansdale a couple of times. If I would have been smart, I'd have put them all together, but why do that? Because I want to keep you guessing. So these are the 4 worker houses. These worker houses were housed by the people that worked Harlansdale for many years, but they were also part of the history on the factory. And they were originally at Franklin Road and then moved to the site where they are located today. They are in disrepair. So as this is one of those public-private partnerships, opportunities, maybe some historical grant monies to go toward this restoration. It's not about telling you what we're going to use them for. Now it's time to restore it, bring it back to so that it will not fall in. And so we've owned the property in 2024 for 20 years as a city. So they've been sitting for that long. We've done some Band-Aid things, but they did a roof to it. But it really does need to be conditioned.
Mayor, may I ask a question? This is unfunded, and I would go out there frequently, and my fear is that this continues to be unfunded, and they're in pretty bad shape.
They are.
So I wonder if there's a creative way, if this does or does not, I guess depending on if it gets worked into the CIP, but, we have a partnership with Friends of Franklin Parks, but there are also other possibly people or uses or nonprofits or community-driven organizations that might be willing to, I don't know what we're going to use them for. Maybe there is a plan for how we're going to use them, but when I walk through there with, I'm like, not sure what we're really going to do with them. They're little small 1,000-square-foot houses, but there are some, maybe nonprofits or someone that would take on refurbishing one. I don't know if there's if this doesn't make the cut though, maybe there's a creative way to put out bring us your idea. Nonprofit,
I completely agree with you. It's not that we haven't tried in the past, but however, they have not made a prioritization list. And so, as I've mentioned before, one of the great things that we have worked into, if you still go that route, is at least place it on an opportunity list. If you place it at least on an opportunity, then we then can explore multiple options that maybe we didn't have years ago.
And I will say, right before COVID, we had a nonprofit approach us about this type of partnership, and we expressed definitely an openness to that. That sort of stalled when all that changed, but I think that still remains something we're open to in terms of how that could be used and partnering in both restoring, preserving, but also creating some public value and use out of it. So that's certainly an idea that could still be explored. And you've got multiple ones, so you could have grants for some things, partnerships for others. Those are all, there are multiple options to look at.
I think
Definitely an opportunity item.
I remember there was even some conversations about could you run a kayak
Yeah.
business out of there or whatever, let somebody restore it. They do the work and they run, but it's a great, convenient location to, if it was recreationally involved, that kind of a thing. I think there are potential opportunities.
They are, and I think if we really do dive into the conservation easement, what is allowed on the property, those kind of things, there are limitations, but they also provide guidance. And so, anyway, here's something before you that after 20 years, we really do need to act. Yes.
Give it a couple more years and you won't have to worry about it.
Demolition by the
Yeah.
That's why we keep
the
roofs.
And here's something a little wild, but it's not wild. How many acres is that park?
It's 199, 200 acres.
Okay. How about if we offer one of those homes to a caretaker and they live in that home, part of their salary is their home. I mean, we have studio apartments and one-bedroom apartments that are smaller than that. We refurbish that, they are able to live there and they're the caretaker of our farm. And they stay there and they're there, and their job is to check on everything every day while they're working, and they have some time off. They don't have to be there 24/7, 7 days a week, but they're there checking on and making sure things get open when they have events there. That could be something.
Very much so. Very much so.
So I think we ought to think outside the box here for one or two of those homes.
Or outside the house that's falling down, one of the two. So is that the front and the back?
That's the front of one and the back of another. There's four homes, two on the located on the inner urban and two down the main drive. Mhm.
I just think it's hard for us to prioritize. We don't know what it's going to be used for.
Well,
I
in
know
the
that's
master plan, it always, when you look at the historical parts, the master plan says to restore every structure on there and interpret it. Now, how you utilize the inside, that's totally up to where we are in
Got it.
2024. But today it's more about save the structure. And so if you can kind of think about it from that standpoint, but there's a lot of ideas what we could use it for.
One more technical. Is this the interior renovation or the exterior, or is this everything?
This is everything. Mhm.
So I'd be kind
Interior-
of curious if some of this doesn't flesh out, an exterior only renovation, or what that would look like. That might get it up in the prioritization. If, let's say it's it's a 1.3 to do the exterior, get the show, get it rough, basically like roughed end. And then,
You'll want to get it conditioned. What we've learned is
conditioned as well, but I mean, it still doesn't mean
But
you
it
have to
doesn't
put
mean you have to.
all the fits and
Yeah, that
finishes.
might be where your public-private partnership
Yeah.
is. You might have some in-kind.
That's a good point. Yeah, you do that.
Where does the 2.75 million come from?
It, basically looking at like the Hayes House, the cost associated with that, and then cost
Hotel,
per square
motel?
foot. Oh, from a
Oh,
funding
you mean
standpoint.
you mean from a revenue,
Yeah,
from a
where does the
funding standpoint?
2.75 million come from?
Well,
You have multiple sources. Hotel motel could be part of it, your general funding in terms of how you put into bond proceeds, et cetera. There are grant opportunities for preservation of historic buildings. We just got $300,000 this past week identified through Tennessee Department of, Community and Economic Development, or community, yeah, I believe that was the right department. But so we look for those there are multiple opportunities there. And wouldn't apply for facilities because it's not an expansion, enhancement to services, but you've got some opportunities there.
and so that'll be part of the discussion in CIP. It's not every single project in parts will come out of just a general fund. You've got parkland, you've got hotel motel, you've got facilities tax. So some of that will come into play as how your prioritizations become, because certain fundings will not apply to others. And I'm not going to take all of Michael's thunder, as he's going to go over the funding model. So let's go on to Jim Warren Park. This park's been around since the 1970s, but we did a major renovation. That's where you see all of what you see today was in 1997. And so except for tennis. Yes, you're exactly right. But tennis was on board by 2000. So as part of Southeast, as we move the football program out, here comes the opportunities of maybe redesigning that part slightly. You want to keep your baseball programs. We want to expand to the Miracle Fields. We want to expand those things, but you do have some space we do need to revamp where the maintenance facility is and the uses on the property. So the goal is to at least let's put that back to the community to design something of what could be. And then that will dictate where that overall project number would become. The next thing, again, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I went too fast.
That's all right. I did have a quick question. As you're talking about relocating, and when you say demo, is that demolition or the demonstration field there? Where it says relocate demo?
That's actually do away with a football field if you buy the football program moving. Now, it doesn't mean it can't stay a field, but you might redesign the field for something different, whether that might be courts or it might be there's a different purpose. My suggestion in looking at the Parks and Recreation, and I get this a lot because you're right beside the county facilities, we do not do soccer. So let me make that very clear. There's private soccer, but we are not in the business of soccer. So if you begin to move soccer over, we've been asked that many a time since Southeast has come on as part of the design, could those be soccer fields? Well, one sport dominates this community, and that's what you don't want. You want to have diversity. So allowing for us to maybe redesign this area. Is it rugby? Is it lacrosse? Is it something else that might come in? But think about what is that need that you want, because this is a perfect opportunity that you've got some room to expand and what that could be.
And that's why I'm asking the question is where would you move, for example, the Franklin Cowboys and that competitive football experience?
That's going to Southeast.
Yeah, that's what the
That's what
Southeast
Southeast is.
Southeast then no longer here?
Correct.
For any practices or
Correct.
anything?
So
Just wanted to make sure.
this would come in conjunction as Southeast opens. You're moving that whole program over. And so the expansion, let me share with where football is going in their master planning. Football is not just the small tykes anymore. What you consider, and if they're cheerleading, they have at least 5 cheerleaders to one boy playing football, but it's a great program. But now you're coming into flag football, and you're seeing that it's co-ed. And the opportunity now you're seeing at the high school level with the girls, as well as we're thinking about even adults are asking for flag football. So there's a lot of different opportunities there. And you don't have to change the field, but it does give you the opportunity that say, hey, what else could be at Jim Warren Park? So, or a spray ground. So that's been talked about.
Go ahead, Alderman.
So to be clear, we're not going to be in the soccer business. That's
We-
not part of our plan.
That's Parks and Recreation of the county.
Okay.
And so when you
I don't
begin to
have any issues with that. I just want to make sure I'm clear.
That's been a brilliant thing that has happened in this community is to divide those up. And
Sure
have
is.
the
And
county run soccer and we do
We do baseball and football.
Yeah.
Perfect. And so we're in the American football business.
We are.
On that map,
I should have
on
said
that map, which
I
are we
take
considering?
that.
Which are we considering football fields? Because I've seen lacrosse played on 2 fields, and I've seen
Yes.
football played on others.
Well,
but-
they play on all, but we also share. We have 16 schools that play at these areas. And so, so this is your football areas. This is their home currently. And then we also utilize what was the old rodeo grounds, for those that may remember, in Franklin. Yes, this was the bowl. We filled this in when I first got here. But this is where we host lacrosse, but they also football host their practices and as well as their camps.
So would you be considering both of those?
I think you ought
potentially being
to.
up for play?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
As well as the expansion. You could take also whether you expand and we're able to get another field or two for baseball out of it. We host a lot of tournaments. And so that's the reason we also partnered with Franklin Special. But there is need for field space for that particular sport as well. But what else could be in there is my point.
Lacrosse does become sanctioned and next year, which is great, and that obviously means more schools can actually host lacrosse instead of being off the fields. But there's still only so many fields. What we don't have is a place to host lacrosse tournaments where we can actually benefit economically, and also some of us don't have to keep driving to Alabama and North Carolina every time there's a lacrosse tournament. So I think there's opportunity for sure, as long as we could provide the the infrastructure to host large tournaments, not just for resident games, but to bring that here.
And that's where your Southeast, so your Phase 2 of Southeast that I mentioned early. Think about those additional fields. They could be all football or all lacrosse and work with that. Now, here comes your tourism. So you could host some very large tournaments there. And it could be week-long as far as, sometimes our baseball tournaments, they'll start on a Wednesday and finish on a Sunday or a Monday. So you could do that there as well. But there's also a need for practice space in our community. I've received calls from all of you, and you know that. It can't be 7 days a week, or you wouldn't have a field. But just think about what that design and potential could be once Southeast is on board.
Well, and the other great thing, I think you're probably fixing to move on. We've also never had the opportunity to add a miracle field. And while we're finally getting to the dance when it comes to the inclusive playground, this is another part of that parcel that really, I mean, helps us serve our community in a much greater way.
Thank you.
Lisa, before you
Yes, sir.
pull that back up, you've got the lake, is that? you
Yes.
see what I'm talking about
Right through here?
There's a lot of practice that goes on, or something or other, between the
Yes.
lake and the road.
So we-
is that,
Yes, sir. We
do they
had.
schedule that through you, or they just
They
kinda
do.
show up?
We
Okay.
do. If it's a team, we required they have insurance, to make sure. If it's individuals, we
That's-
don't.
It's not individual.
No,
I mean,
it's-
it's individuals
yeah.
playing as a team.
Yeah, we have teams, they're scheduled. If not, they would be on top of each other. There was a third years ago, and in 2006, we opened up the skate park. I was told that no one would ever use it. But we were very excited over that. So think about the expansion of some of those programs. Those are your alternative sports. And we've got to always, that's where your mountain bike and some of that kind of things come in. Not everybody's going to play in a team sport. And so that's where that comes into play. But anyway, Jim Warren has a lot of potential. Going back to Harlansdale, this is the old power station. This was served as the power station in Franklin, which was originally fueled by coal. And the interurban rail system ran behind there, and it actually would drop workers off. So there's a lot of potential there, but this is a public-private partnership. We've already been approached by Friends of Franklin Parks and other groups to say, we see such a potential of what this could be. And so think about that project as it would, as a restoration project at the farm. And it's, if you're not familiar where this is, if you're standing at the barn, this is to the left of the barn or south. I went the wrong way. Excuse me. The next project is also at Harlansdale. This is on the dog park on the north side. So if you know where the dog park is, you've probably passed this barn 1,000 times. One of the things we always try to do is look at opportunities to where you can provide something. If you can't afford the large event things, if you can't afford to maybe pay for the barn at some point in time, it'll be a private rental or the arena. Here comes a place to where we make a pavilion that's affordable. And so you basically are restoring and you repurpose an existing structure. And so we also have a portable restroom that's at the dog park. We do not have any public restrooms on this site. It would serve also for the dog park. It would serve for the pavilion and also the equestrian. So that is one area to look at. This also might have potential of some grants for preservation use for a repurposing of a facility. But that's the old hay barn. The next thing is a trails project. It's part of our trails system. At the bottom of the page, this is Bicentennial Park, and you have an existing trail system. This is where I talked about the parking lot would be, that there's parking trays through there. This has potential. What the Anderson property, is my understanding, is under acquisition. And so at some point in time over the next 10 years, staying along that river and making that connection would be a nice loop. And think about it just not in this area, that you could walk this particular trail system, hit an existing sidewalk, go down Franklin Road, hit Harlansdale, come inside Harlansdale, go across the pedestrian bridge, down Chestnut Bend, and do that several miles of walking. That's a wonderful fitness area for our community, but it also provides connectivity when you're having an event. This is also another connection at Harlansdale. I think engineering, Jonathan was very gracious to put an exhibit together. This is what, when the pathway is complete at Harlansdale, this is kind of what it's going to look like. It kind of gives you that idea of from the pedestrian bridge. What's proposed to you is to make the interurban a hard surface with the we're doing some stamped concrete right now to bring attention to the interurban rail system, but you also want to be able to be ADA accessible. Right now, this is just dust and rocks. It is hard to put a wheelchair when we bring people to an event. So the goal is you may do this in sections, but you would go the full length of the property, which would lead you over to Creekside at some point in time. But we do have the rail system bed still there. And so the goal would be is to pave that rail system where it's with the surface and get you down to the canoe launch and then back up. It is used for vehicular traffic with the arena. It's used during pilgrimage, but it gets a lot of use. And right now, if you've been out there, your boots get really dusty.
So you've got this drawn, the pink line does go all the way down to the end of our existing property.
Yes, sir. That the rock
great.
wall and the bed that was part of the rail system was there. It wasn't a true rail system. I mean, it was
Right.
wheels, but yes, it's still there, and you can see it.
The other thing to think about with projects like this, it is a grant opportunity, so we may be wise to at least invest in some design work that puts us in the game for grants should they come our way. So there are a couple of these that think about that too, is if we can't fully fund the project, it still might be wise to do some design work so that we are ready to go if the right grant opportunity comes our way. So just something to think about.
Go ahead, please.
Can those be, those opportunities, so we know exactly what they are, be identified to us? Which ones, or are they all?
Well, such as the transportation enhancement grant that we placed the bridge in, Paul and his
Yeah.
team were instrumental. This is a connection of one of those types of grants. It also could be a recreation trails grant, so we can provide you what we know today.
Yeah.
And as new opportunities that might come with different grants through
Why
the
don't you
state
give-
or
Why
federal.
don't you give us a list that
We'll kind of-
says,
yeah, we'll-
these might be eligible for transportation or recreation, or whatever kind of grant.
Okay.
Those are possibilities. So if you have one of the names of the project, you might have two or three that it could be eligible for. Maybe there's one that could only be eligible for one kind of grant. Let us know those.
Be happy to do that.
Yeah,
That's a
that might
great
be-
idea.
That might be helpful.
Yeah, it's something between engineering and parks. We can kind of flag some ones that might fit those categories that we know fairly regularly come along as grant opportunities. So we'll try to flag those for you.
This is another trail system. It is going to take you to Cool Springs. And so in the lower left-hand section is Aspen Grove. This is an existing trail system. So if you're not familiar with the trail system at Aspen Grove Park, if you know where P.F. Chang's is, we actually own that parking tray with that pergola. And there's a trail system that winds down through the wooded area, and that's what you see on your screen. This is along Spencer Creek that leads you to Mallory Station Road. Making this particular connection, it's about a half a mile. It's around 3 property owners, and the county government owns this property here toward Mallory Station. This provides an opportunity of doing an off-road connection with Gothic Cork. If you're familiar with the A game and other type of facilities, we have a lot of traffic in this area from a recreational standpoint. Making some connections, but this would lead you at some point in time all the way to Matt Catcher and connect it to Harlansdale. So this is a huge connection that I think over time, again, the grant opportunities are maybe a public-private partnership. That might through right-of-way or even acquisition. The next project was Winstead Hill. This project is, Winstead Hill is 64 acres. It's located off of Matt Catcher right there on Lewis, off of Columbia Avenue. this park has seen a lot of traffic since this area has developed. And so we see it more at lunchtime and that type of thing. We have more of just a pump and haul. It's always been just just a tank. It does not have a restroom. It's really just a porta potty. And so one of them does not work. We're down to one now. And so we'd like to extend. We're not requesting to build anything much larger. The space is there. It works well. But we really do need to add restrooms to this site, and that's extending that sewer to this area.
How far away is the sewer?
About 300 feet. It's that green line.
Is it at Mac Hatcher or is it right there at the
Right
green?
there.
It's this green dot right here is the manhole. The red would be the extensions to
We're not
300-400
talking-
feet. It's
How
not
many?
300-400 feet. It's not
Good.
a big extension.
Yeah, see, these things help us to make decisions, because we're not talking a very long distance.
But the impact is
It's $1
great.
million, but you know, how many, I'd also like to know how many people visit here. How often
Oh,
is
yeah.
this park used? I mean, what is the, you know, if we had 200 people a year here, that'd be one thing. But if we had 2,000, 5,000 people visiting here a year, this makes more sense as a project.
We can do that.
So to help us to make a decision on that, because if it's utilized a lot, then we need to be paying more attention to it.
I would also argue that additional data around what it costs us to pump and haul, well, it'd be great to have
Yes.
sewer because it's close. Almost $1.1 million investment. If we're spending $3,000 a year to pump and haul, maybe that's not the best use of our taxpayers' money.
Is this,
Well, it's highly used. I don't know what highly means, but I can tell you, there's a lot of cars through there. Anytime you go out there, lunch, whatever, there's a lot of cars in that parking lot.
is this cost assuming us doing it or bidding it out for somebody else to do?
Bidding it out.
Because we could, I mean, a few hundred feet of sewer, we could probably,
Yes, we could. Our water and sewer department could absolutely help with that.
If we knew the cost difference on that, that would be important. Also, safety improvements to this area, if you're going to improve the sewer and put in new restrooms. Right now, the screenshot, I don't think, shows any lighting there in the area. If any lighting needs to be added and then if it's a dawn to dusk type setup.
Well, you're not putting in new restrooms off of this. Are you putting in?
Yeah.
Yes, you would put in to where, right now, if we could utilize the small, it's just a shelter over
Yeah.
the top of, so my suggestion would be is you could do something very small, almost like 2 family restrooms, very small.
Okay.
In this area. I'm not suggesting build more restrooms, but I need 2. I'm down to 1. So, and we need sewer. And I think then it allows for that. But yes, we can definitely look at what the cost is and that type of thing. But you are down to 1 restroom. The other tank collapsed and we cannot fix that.
And this actually, you know, $1 million, a little over $1 million. I mean, that's not chump change, but it's not huge. And if we wait another 3 to 5 years or whatever, it's going to be a lot more. So we might look at the cost analysis. And I think what Greg said about what are we spending, upkeep, what we've got there, and pump and haul and everything. We need to know those things as well.
Absolutely.
Who maintains
sir.
the top of the hill?
Sir?
Who maintains the top?
The Sons of the Confederacy. They own their portion of the property, and we work well with them then we maintain ours. But we share that small parking area. Ours is paved, and then theirs is unpaved.
Gravel.
Yes, gravel. We're proposing to do another partnership with Franklin Special. So we did a master plan on the property, and this time we are proposing tennis courts. Their entire program of all of their schools use Jim Warren Park, and we have the 8 courts. And so we are proposing maybe to look at maybe a tennis complex on their property with their land. We also then could be able to utilize it in the summertime for league play and that type of thing. Now, whether it's tennis and pickle, but we know that the tennis is their sport for boys and girls. And so that leads all the way to their middle school.
Does this include the other
fields too?
No, we're just proposing. We've already built we've already built the baseball and softball. This is their green field, so that didn't come to fruition. They just use it as open space for their PE classes. And we're not married to that. This was just a sketch for a master plan. They have lots of property throughout multiple of their schools in that area across from Jim Warren. So whether it's Franklin Special or maybe we share the love to some others, I know the principals would like for us to come over. But we've made it walkability between the schools now. So that's a huge part. And that last project we did with them was 50/50. This is Collins Farm. This came before, oh, I'm sorry, sir.
Question, sorry about that.
No.
Again, my kids have been through both of those schools, so I know the area really well. On this master plan, I don't see any changes for parking. So if you put those pickleball or tennis courts down there on what would be the north side, or in this case, the left side of the screen, are there going to be any changes for parking?
Well, what you can't see is even the parking that we did that made part of the design for the baseball field. So we added some additional things when we did that as well. That's not on this plan. This is just it was a 20,000-foot view of what could be. They're not married to the tennis courts going on this property. They may take it to the elementary school. They have over 80 acres, Johnson. So there's the possibility that it's not just right here, since they built the the Performing Arts Center as well. So we're open to whatever property they may have, but it's across from Jim Warren, therefore then it's easy to maintain and also work
And
together.
that's why I'm asking is I personally experienced a lot of parking issues over there.
Yes.
We're there for baseball, practices are going on. Now, if you're going to add these additional courts, I don't know that there's substantial parking.
You'd have to build that as well. And if they have the acreage, we should be able to accommodate that parking venue. But that's a great point. Collins Farm was brought to you. Paul brought this for you. This is the trail system that came through. We're going to narrow that down because of the historic area. And so this is part of that trail system and improvement of the parking area. And on this site is also the structures. We'd like to at least, and this is where I made the mistake. That should have been, instead of 350, that should have been 850. I got fat thumbs, but
That's
let's
just
don't
a
talk
small
about that.
mistake.
Let's don't talk about that. But what we would like to do is what we're doing at Harlansdale, the same proposal is, let's at least get these structures dried in and to where maybe take a look at some opportunities. As someone mentioned, maybe nonprofit. DAR has been on the property and has brought a lot of attention to this property in a very positive way, and we're very thankful for that.
I thought they wanted to use this as their office. Was that pre-COVID and it all?
That was, and they're still interested, but I think they're more of their state chapter or so have to also give that direction. So over time, though, we potentially could.
Would this also be one that could be on the list for grants?
Absolutely.
Okay.
From grants to partnerships, very much so. Maybe some even in kind. It also has a conservation easement and on the National Register. And then Fieldstone. This is one of your oldest parks that you have. It was built in 1988 with Fieldstone, the subdivision, and handed over. It is a great park. It's been utilized for years. We work with the county. They are pulling softball is changing over a little bit, but we will be still working with them on the senior games and if they're overflow with tournaments and that type of thing. But the concession and the fingers is hodgepodged out there, but this concession area doesn't even work at all. We have some restrooms. I'd like to look at a design if we're going to utilize this space. This is a great space for tournaments, for adult softball, fast pitch, maybe multi-purpose. We've talked about cornhole tournaments out here in the future, but we need some really good restrooms and the capability maybe bring a food trucks in. Concessions, people are not running concessions anymore. You might have it at a high school, but not every day that the Rotary's coming out or doing. Those are things of the past. So creating something, whether you can redesign or take this down and build a space that might be more of a pavilion type overview with public restrooms, food truck could pull up in, serve. Just, there's some opportunity there. And so that's it. Thank y'all so much.
Is that a motion?
That would take us to the next item.
Yeah, this takes us to the money section.
Thank you.
I just want to say one thing.
Yes, ma'am.
Lisa, thank you. You do such a stellar job for us. And she does. It's just amazing what you bring to the city. I mean, when did you start with the city?
I tell Eric I was very young.
Yeah,
but,
I remember it
I-
well.
22 years ago.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Because when I
I
came,
was
you
a
were
little young
here.
then.
And I said, who is this lady? But anyway, I just want to tell you, you do such a great job, and your team does too. And I know there's a lot to do, and there's a lot of things we want. There are a lot of needs as well, and the people expect this adds to our quality of life. But you're always in tune. You're always looking for opportunities. And your team, you lead a great team, and you're a great leader. And I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for those kind words.
Amen.
Let's go to the next item on the agenda, which happens to be the discussion of capital investment plan financial model.
So we heard you say you want it all. Well, this will help provide some context of where we are versus the approved projects, how it relates to whatever else might be on the menu, if you will, thinking about it that way. And Michael's done an update related to that plan that we'd like to walk you through tonight.
Reality is this.
Reality checks come in many different ways. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Michael Walters-Young, your Budget and Strategic Innovation Manager. Tonight, we will give you an update to the financial model, reviewing for a few minutes the various sources of funding that go into your capital investment plan, the assumptions of future funding, which pertain directly to a lot of what you have just seen, a brief update to our debt capacity model, which certainly plays a role as a major financing source, and then, if time allows, a brief summary of the expenses that are part of the approved CIP, just so you can see how that plays in. But certainly, we will end with a summary, and Eric will give closing comments. So you start with what you have because it's the most logical place or best place to start, to paraphrase The Sound of Music. Before I go through the individual sections, there is one overarching statement to make about the assumptions which are made herein. There is no, I repeat, no assumption for any increase of any impact fee, any tax, any fine, or any existing fee that goes into fund capital investment plan. Should you choose to vote and change them, we will change the model accordingly and let you know of the anticipated resources that you have. But everything that's projected herein assumes current tax rates, sales, property, hotel, motel, and current road impact and other impact fees, just so that's clear. Your capital investment plan has roughly 12 separate funding sources, 9 of which we consider internal funding sources. So the general fund, sanitation, road impact, your facilities taxes, stormwater, hotel, motel, parkland, and the water management fund. They are internal because they are under your direct control as the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. There are, of course, external sources, which we love to use when we have availability for them, and that would include federal, state, and private grants, utility fund contributions where utilities are part of a road project, as well as private contributions. So the largest single funding source of your plan is the general fund. There are generally 4 components that we have used to make up general fund contributions. The most significant, as you see on slide 6, is the capital reserve or the capital funding account, which is part of your unassigned fund balance in the general fund. So on the screen right now and in your handouts, you can see that the first 33% of your general fund, as per policy approved under Resolution 2014-64, goes to stabilizing, literally, the city's finances. There are separate components for cash flow stabilization. That was a direct growth, as the policy was in total, but that was a direct result of the Great Recession. Because we are so reliant on sales tax for operations, you reserve a significant portion of your fund balance right away to make sure to buffer ongoing operations from economic downturns. And you see the rest of them there: debt service stabilization, insurance stabilization, et cetera. 33 to 45% is your supplemental reserve. That is to cover all other items which may come up that the first 33% did not, leaving anything above 45% free and clear to spend and cash fund or turn into general obligation debt funding of capital projects. To close fiscal 2023, that number is approximately $38.1 million. The other components, yes, Alderman.
So if I look at the fiscal budget 2023, it appears that we had a win of $9 million additional dollars in that the capital funding account as compared to how we projected.
That's correct. The overall fund balance of the general fund of the city of Franklin increased by over $10 million. But as you go through this exercise, we have to reserve a small amount of that fund balance is non-spendable. The rest of it is unassigned, and that's when you begin the calculation.
Is any of that the government's for, let's see, 4.75 million or whatever it was?
No.
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 Okay. Twice.
So I'm grateful that we have a almost $10 million surplus in budget in our city government.
The last several years have been very good years from a performance standpoint regarding general fund operations. The other two major sources which fund and are forecast to continue to fund, we made a recommendation to you, and you have adopted this in the last several budgets, and that is that half of the incremental local sales tax increase from 2018 and half of the property tax raised, which had been going to pay off the tax increment financing district, would go to fund ongoing operations of the city of Franklin, and half would go to fund capital projects. For fiscal 24, that's $5.75 million between both of them. Roughly 4.2 from the sales tax and about 1.2, 1.3 from the property tax that was paying off the TIF bonds. You see on the screen, also on page 12 of your detailed handout, the bar chart. So the items in purple are your incremental funding. The blue is the cash you have in hand today. Roughly $5 to going up to $6.5, $7 million annual new general fund cash is what we propose, should you wish to keep that division of dollar for dollar from those sources over the next 10 years.
So the 5.7 is the half that goes to capital.
That's correct.
Yes.
So the total is 11
That's correct.
or whatever you do the math.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's
Portions go into your operations.
Between both sources.
between both.
And go
okay,
back
thank
to say something about, for the people that haven't been here all this time, half of the local option sales tax that we gave to schools, then that ended, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one of the things.
Yeah.
And half of the property tax, which had been used to service for the debt increment financing district, you know, got paid off.
Right. So
So
that
in
has
other words,
become a
that-
general fund revenue source, and we've allocated half of that to operations and the other half to capital investment funding.
Because we paid it all off, and we paid off the money that we had loan to.
You've essentially retired that
Right.
tax increment district.
We have reduced taxes. Well, yeah. I mean, you know, the amount, the total amount coming in hasn't been reduced, but the tax rate has been
Your
reduced.
property tax rate is at 32 cents. It was 41 cents prior to that. And yeah, so, yeah.
So you phrased it a couple of times, should you choose to continue the split.
That is your current, that is what has been
Current
adopted within the budget on an annual basis as a funding recommendation from the city administrator, and you have agreed to it by adopting the annual budget. This model assumes that split 50-50 is going to continue. Okay. There are 3 funds which have no assumed revenue in the 10-year forecast. The sanitation and stormwater funds are relatively straightforward. Sanitation is only used as a funding source for capital projects that pertain to improvements at Century Court. Generally, what we will do is build into the rates enough money to service debt. We've issued roughly $3.3 million over the last 10 years to do repaving and improvements to the base infrastructure and transfer station, simply because with the heavy use that asphalt got, it needed to be replaced. In the stormwater fund, the fees support operations. There is not sufficient money to support both operations and capital the way that the fees are currently structured. The one that you may ask a question about is the Road Impact Fund. This is a major fund of the city of Franklin, Tennessee. Year-end fund balance was over $25 million, and available for capital was north of $22 million. But through 2032, there is still $22 million of debt service, which is charged against the Road Impact Fund, and in fact at the level of $4 million a year, each year in 25, 26, and 27. It's not that we're not going to be collecting road impact fees in the next 10 years, but the model assumes that there won't be any net new revenue yet coming from road impact because you've got this debt obligation out there. And if development starts to go down, collections will go down, and there will still have debt to be paid off. Talk to me in 24 months when we pay off an additional $8 million, and we'll start making sure that there's some net operating or net road impact fees going in to fund the capital plan.
We have used this as a targeted cash source for certain projects, but we are prioritizing that debt obligation. So you've got some capacity here, but we're very careful about how we do that just because we still have a significant amount of outstanding debt there.
So then there are 5 funds that are left, and those are the development and tourism-related funds. City facilities, county facilities, parkland dedication, and hotel motel, and those 4.
2 facilities, yeah.
2 facilities. There are 3 disclaimers that I have to say. The first is the 3 development-related funds, city facilities, county facilities, parkland, just like road impact, are highly dependent upon development. When permits are pulled, when developments actually come forward. Thus, for both operating and capital revenue purposes, we are very conservative with what we project. The second is that these funds are not used for operations. They are only used, and in the case of the development funds, can only be used for capital purposes. And the third is we do deduct 10% and reserve it every year to meet state accounting requirements. So anything that's available shown here already deducts 10% to make sure that we can close books appropriately as per state guidance and regulations. So the city facilities tax approved in 1988 for proceeds levied against new construction can only be used for 4 purposes: new police, new fire, new sanitation, and new parks-related equipment and capital projects. The 10-year model assumes 2.5% a year, or $2.5 million a year, generated annually. The 25-year annual collection in city facilities has been roughly $3.3 million. Over the last 3 years, we collected $3.4 million, $2.5 million, and $1.5 million, respectively. So it is again, looking both historically and at trends, we feel comfortable enough with 2.5 as an average.
So just for clarification, when we read this, proceeds, the tax levied on new construction only. That's not improvements to existing facilities, just new.
We can only use it for the way
New capacity.
New capacity. That's probably the best way to put it. Right. So we can buy an additional. We can build a new park, a new fire station, an additional side loader, but you can't replace using
And
facilities.
you can't
tax
pay
fund.
for staff.
You can't pay for staff.
Would this also fall into what we have as the scheduled vehicle replacement
No.
No,
program?
It is for new purchases.
only ads.
Okay. But, yeah, so it's a new vehicle.
Yeah, it's replaced.
When you buy it new, but you can't replace it. Replacement becomes part of
Okay,
operations.
just wanting everybody to.
One shot
Good.
for new stuff.
Okay.
And the revenues,
Mm-hmm.
the revenues you described was 1.5, the most recent period?
Fiscal 23, June 30, 2023 was $1.5 million in total collections.
So
Yes.
descending, thank you.
The county facilities tax fund has been generated since 2010, and it's the city's share of that. We have generally used, there's no legal prohibition on where to use this, but we have used it for projects which have a tie to Williamson County facilities. So
Or school
Or school facilities. If there is, so for example, we appropriated $1.75 million to help with the 96 West Trail because it connected it to the FSSD properties. The 10-year annual average has been roughly $2 million. We are forecasting $900,000 annually for the 10 years. The last 3 years have been $950,000, $878,000, and $736,000, respectively. Hotel motel. We currently levy a 4% occupancy tax on all hotel, motel, and short-term residential VRBO stays within Franklin. Historically, we have used this fund to pay for historic preservation and parks-related capital expenditures. We also pay debt service, again, related to historic preservation and parks-related projects, and 1% of the previous year's calendar year collections go to support the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We are forecasting. Yes, sir.
1% of the 4%.
Okay, 1%, right. The average here is about let me see.
1.3.
Yeah, 1.3 million. We collected $6.86 million in fiscal 23 from hotel motel.
What was it?
$6.86 million in hotel motel fees in the fiscal year which ended June 30th. The recurring expenses in this fund are roughly 2.1 to 2.5 million between the debt service and the obligation to the CVB. So this is definitely an area which has capacity, and we are forecasting that in this model moving forward.
And we've seen pretty strong growth in this revenue source overall. You see pretty steady and strongly growing occupancy level, and average daily rates have continued to grow. So this is, of our revenue sources, this is probably the one that is outpacing our budget consistently and at a higher rate than anything else that we see.
And how does that rate compare to some of our surrounding areas?
I checked on that before this meeting.
Of course you did.
So keep in mind that when you stay in Franklin, you're getting a 4% city occupancy tax as well as a 4% county occupancy tax. Metro Nashville, as effective July 1, raised their county tax to 7% from 6%, and their city taxes at 3%. So that's a total. The Davidson County rate is up to 7% occupancy tax. That 1% was increased as part of the funding structure to improve Nissan Stadium for the new ballpark. And then 3% is the city rate.
So 10 versus
In
8.
addition,
So it's at 10.
it's at 10.
It's at 10 versus
And that's
8.
the
Can't, but
legal
county and
max.
city are the same thing in Metro.
No, not there.
For the purpose of this exercise, the state has it segregated differently.
Yeah.
So there's a county, there is a spreadsheet available or PDF available on the state, I believe it's the comptroller's website. Forgive me if I'm incorrect in that, but it shows here is your county rate, and then it does parentheses except for blank cities. So in Williamson, those that have city occupancy, you see here's the county rate, and then it has Brentwood, Franklin.
But if I may, just to take it a little bit further, we are number 6 in the state in tourism.
Yeah.
If that puts that in perspective, Franklin, Tennessee, number 6. Chattanooga, Memphis, Nashville, help me, Eric,
Knoxville.
Knoxville. So that's pretty impressive.
The final category is parkland dedication. We're projecting an average of $1 million, just north of $1 million annually. The collections for the last 3 years in parkland, interestingly, have gone on the upswing. $825,000 in 2021, $1.3 million in 2022, and $2.3 in 2023.
Back on hotel motel, just so you have this context, we do have authority from the state to go to 5%, but we are at 4 right now, just to keep that in mind. 5 is the cap.
And we're going to need that
And-
one
Yeah,
of these
so
days for-
we have one that we have authority, 1% that we have authority for that we have not exercised to this point.
And when was the last time that we raised and went to 4%?
2008?
Before my time, I've been here 15 years and it was
2007 or 8.
existing 4% then.
Started at 4.
I
Yeah,
think it was 7.
You-
It's before the downturn.
Is the county equally capped at 5?
yeah, we're each at, same.
And this is something that I've been thinking about a lot. I know there's been discussions, but from the citizens' perspective, we've got 1% on the table that all these tourists, I'm curious to how many tourists are coming here versus some other, we've been to other cities with 9%, hotel motel taxes, and their hotels are full. I think I've been thinking about this a lot, and from a citizen's perspective, if we're not quite frankly, taking everything we can from the tourists as they come and stay in our hotels to supplement some of these things that we just looked at. I think we really have to look long and hard at that because that's someone coming in here. Now I don't think it's going to damage.
I've got my.
Excuse me?
I've got my claim on that.
You got your claim on that. I'm
Yeah,
just
that
making a
1%.
comment. But
It's
the
coming.
yeah, okay.
Don't
but
claim it.
okay. I've lost my train of thought now. So
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Just speak up. But we've got to look at that, and our citizens. When we're looking at a $48 million park that could, as Lisa talked about, bring in some outside tournaments, we need to look at this piece too because, and with all the parks, cool things we've got going on. But thank you.
And
The county puts theirs in their general fund, and ours strictly goes for tourism-related things. Part of the philosophy, at least while I've been on the board, is that 1% that we haven't used yet. There's been some pushback from CVB in the past to raise it.
Hotels.
But also, and of course, the hoteliers are not happy about that either. But I think the existing philosophy is that 1% is going to be used for something very special, and we really don't know what that something very special might be. So, it could be ball fields, it could be facility.
Well, we just that's how long have we had that? If that's been, and I love that idea that we do reserve that for something, but we've been neglecting to collect something as we've waited for that special thing. So I guess in the meantime, we could have that as we've lost out on some revenue while we've been waiting on the special thing. I don't think we should let too much more time pass, with the popularity, as Brandy said, of Franklin, tourism, and then the citizens are just losing out because we're not collecting as much as we can from those people who are coming and,
One way
Great
to look
traffic.
at it.
That's one way to look at it.
I would be interested to see what even 1/4% or 0.5%, what those.
Go with one. If you're going to do
Oh,
it, do a
it's
percent.
just a one.
1% generates $1.3 million.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a huge revenue source, but it's an important revenue source. So I don't think you want to do quarters and halves. Let's think about what the 1% is. You've got the authority, so I would, that gives you some context, but
I think that's
if you're
great
going to want to
know.
move something, you're going to want that full capacity of the 1%.
Yeah, I appreciate the discussion.
Well, and the other thing is, remember those tourists that come in also spend a lot of money, not just on the hotel motel. So they're bringing a lot of other money in as well.
2022, 1.19 billion.
And
Good
tourists.
stuff.
In tourism impact,
Tourism.
yeah.
Tourism impact.
So that's a 1%, that'd be like if the average room was $200.
Yeah.
And we added another 1% on the hotel motel tax. What's that number?
Yeah.
$2?
Maybe
$2
that's
a night?
easy.
Oh, what it would be for the, yeah.
We're not
the-
gonna drop
the
the- we're not
ADR,
gonna
the
drop-
average rate is more like 145, 150.
$1.45.
Yeah, so,
We're not
right.
going to drive anybody away.
Exactly.
Final three funding sources are all external. There are there are some assumptions made, but there's no inflationary adjustment made for these, just though they are part of the projects. Detailed project sheets and detailed funding by project will be coming later. The goal of tonight was to give you an overall snapshot and to see sort of where we are. So,
Michael, back
yes,
up
ma'am.
for Indu Parkland, because just for Greg's reason, I think it's helpful to know, because you skipped over that because we kept going back to hotel motel.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Parkland dedication began in fiscal 2015. The assumption that we're making is just over $1 million a year, and it is really capturing the anticipated use of the 25% of the total fees, because other fees because of how we've restructured Parkland dedication, other fees may be received, but then given back should the park improvement be done by the developer who is developing that particular development and meeting that Parkland need. We guaranteed, though, that we would collect 25% for overall Parkland development and dedication use citywide. So that's why this assumption is in here,
And
which
it must be
means,
spent in the quadrant, correct?
Yes.
yes, except for this 25%,
Yeah.
which the way that we restructured
Citywide,
it is
and
that
then
the
by district.
yes, 75% is staying
Exactly.
flat.
So I'm going to do a little bit of refereeing
Can I
here.
say
We got
one-
about 20 minutes.
Okay.
And we want to kind of go through especially the financial of what's in your approved plan and how it lays out with resources. So I'm just want to be mindful of what we've got left.
I just want to say, whenever we were talking about the other funding sources, like Water Management Fund, the water and sewer too are not, they're, I guess, enterprise funds.
Yes, but often you have a water and sewer component in a road project. So
Oh,
they
good
can help
point,
pay for
good
those elements. So
Okay.
that's where it plugs in.
But the city really does not, they're not like city funds.
Right, they
They're
can
not the
only
same
go to
thing.
those specific utility improvements.
Right, because we had something in our minutes from last time, and it said something about the city paid some things, but really, the city does not pay the water. I mean, the water.
Our
is-
utility would. Yeah.
The utility is its own.
Yeah.
I would-
I suggest we keep plowing
Okay.
ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, sorry.
If we could.
So, total revenues forecast over the 10-year period are just under $500 million, 498.9. Of that, 94 million are existing resources. Slide 15 or page 5 of your detailed model shows the balance of that cash available since 2015. And you can see how it has grown significantly. But there are differences year to year. It was more last year in fiscal 22, less in 23 because you appropriated it, spent, and cash funded capital projects. The future forecast is for roughly $405 million of new revenues. This is split 48% debt and 52% cash. Now, for reference, when we first presented this sort of pie chart to you in November of 2018, it was 51% debt, 49% cash. And most recently in February of 22, it was 36% debt and 64% cash. So it goes back and forth, but what we have tried to do is to maintain as much cash funding as is possible and reduce the debt as much as possible for future financing. It's still under 50% debt financing your capital plan. It is significantly more debt than we had forecast for you previously. I will explain that in a second. Looking at the debt capacity review, this is detailed on page 7. The proposal is to borrow $195 million to fund already approved CIP projects. Your current debt service as of fiscal 24 is that small red line on your screen and in your packets of $16.23 million. This would peak at $28.2 million in fiscal 28. Now, the projects which are funded are all assuming 20-year issuances. They would be for Southeast Park and Robinson Lake. They would be for Mallory Royal Oaks, Long Lane, Paytonsville and Pratt Lane, and Carlisle Lane. Everything 26 onward are road projects. The 25 issuance is Southeast Park. There is one project which is proposed in here, however, and that's City Hall in fiscal 26 to borrow $80 million for 30 years. We had talked about financing City Hall in the past, whether or not you borrow for 20 or whether you borrow for 30. It being a building that would last longer, you have the ability to borrow for a longer period of time. If you borrowed for only 20 years, the amount of debt service would increase by approximately $1.4 million annually if you issue it over 20 years. The newer the bond issuance, we've assumed 5% in 25, 4.5% in 26 and 28, and 4% in 2030. To put this in recent context, Chattanooga issued over $100 million very recently. And they were, if I recall, Christine's, she said sub 4,
right around 4.
3.97.
Yeah, right at 4.
They have a slightly lower bond rating than we do. So again, we're trying to be very conservative with where the interest rates would be upon issuance. Also, we currently have, as effective June 30th, 2023, $111 million in outstanding general obligation debt. So, with that, given the interest of time, to cover expenses, I'm going to jump ahead to the summary of expenses. We've got $483 million in total projects. This is slide 26 of your packet. 50.7 million you've already completed. They're done, they're paid for. 33.8 are under construction. 117.2 are in a right-of-way phase or bidding. And then 186 million are design but obligated. That would include Balance of Southeast, that would include City Hall, that would include Long Lane, several parks projects. There's 95 million or so which are detailed in the slides 24 and 25, which we have brought before you, and certainly can again, that are really up for reprioritization. For example, Carlisle Lane is set to go in 2030. It would be $20 million of bond issuance. 2030 is still 6 years from now, fiscally speaking. How does all of this shake out and where are you? Slide 28 and page 9 of your detailed summary shows that in the last 5 years, overall financing for the 10-year plan has gone from $302 million to $499 million. Now, that's an increase of 65%. Unfortunately, your capital costs for those same projects have gone up 71.5%. or $201.4 million. At the bottom of the screen, you can see that that leaves you a small balance of $16 million. We've tried to maintain a little bit of capacity for opportunities that may come up. For example, the Creekside development. You needed to have some cash that you had unallocated. That's what we try to do by having this small amount of money set aside. On page 10 of the detailed summary and slide 29, you can see that the total proposed CIP that you have been reviewing over the last several months is a proposal of $1,071,000,000.3. You've already approved $483 million, meaning that there's additional projects for consideration of just under $600 million. Of those approved CIP projects, there's a commitment to fund all of them that I've shown you tonight. $415 million come from your local sources, what I spent 10 to 15 minutes reviewing with you. $68 million come from outside, grants, private donations, utility relocations, etc. That leaves you that $16 million. Of the additional $588 million proposed, roughly $208 million is forecast to come from external sources. Lots of grants with major road projects, for example. But that's only $224.5 million of committed funding. That allows me to queue up the city administrator to close.
So when you look at this, the good news is we have capacity within what is projected and what we have on hand in terms of cash to deliver the projects that were previously identified in the 10-year capital investment program. There's not really significant capacity to do more. So your options are essentially to look at how we reprioritize or reprogram elements of that within approved projects. There may be other projects that aren't currently funded or on that menu that you'd rather do. So you have the ability of around $100 million of approved projects that could be reprioritized, reallocated to other projects you'd like to see done. So that's an element that is within your capacity. There are, and the fact that this is achieved with no tax increases, no other adjustments in fees, et cetera, and you are still funding less than half of it with debt. So you are at still a very strong place. But what we look at as we move into budget, and we look at these decisions, is where are there opportunities to create capacity to do more if that's what you want to do? The reprioritization can get certain things done, but there may be some opportunity to look at capacity. We talked about hotel motel tax. You talk about how you might approach some of the structure here of funding and financing. We do have the opportunity that comes forward, like we did in 2016. This is a reappraisal year. So our property tax rate will be reset as part of that process. Do you want to look at an allocation of property tax rate towards that? What we did in 2016 is we held our rate and we pledged a dime of that to what we called Invest Franklin. And that was projected to help us do capital investment projects. At the time, I think we very conservatively said $100 million of more projects could get done. I think that turned into closer to 200 plus, approaching 300 million. And that's when we also moved into a 10-year planning horizon. So there are opportunities there to look at in terms of how you allocate resources, look at capacity, look at what you can get done. The foundation here too is a very conservative outlook in terms of those revenue sources. We have consistently seen more available cash come in our reserves as we spend less than what our budget is, and we've been conservative in revenue projections. So some of that is likely to happen, but the reality of what we've seen in the last 3 to 4 years is, while that did happen, it was slightly outpaced by the growth in costs. So inflation and just project delivery costs hit us harder. All those numbers have been refreshed in what you've seen today. So it's the best working knowledge we have of what projects will cost to deliver. And we have tried to be conservative there as well. But so this is kind of your reality check of where we are. And it sort of sets the table for decisions we need to make as we look at projects and how you might prioritize, reprioritize, decisions you make around the capacity that's available to get work done. So I'll stop there and answer any questions you have, and thank you,
Alderman
Michael.
Brown, Vice Mayor.
No. Always fantastic job. Thank you for all of this. There's only one data point I'm still looking for. I appreciate you adding at the macro level the 68, 69 million or so that's coming from external sources. I still think in terms of prioritization, seeing that at the individual project level for two reasons. One, to make sure that not only our citizens, but all of us understand that there are projects that we're funding that may have a dollar amount that seems significant. It's not all coming out of our pocket. And two, if there's money that we're going to leave on the table, as we make that prioritization, I'd like to know that before we make that decision. So I appreciate the macro level, but still want to see that at the individual project level as we make those prioritizations.
And we've got that pretty well locked down in the approved project realm. In the future projects, we've done the best we can at projecting that, but there's likely more opportunity to be achieved potentially. So that's just something to keep in mind, that there may be more opportunity there, but we try to be conservative there too and not overpromise other resources. But we likely will do better, especially as we're able to put our investment in place. We can leverage it with certain other sources.
Okay, we've got a proposed calendar of board and mayor and alderman meeting.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry. Did I jump too
just,
far ahead?
No, I apologize, but are we, this feels like, is there another step where we decide on the capital projects ranking? Where we're just giving this as an example, but we're still gonna be revising it?
This is the framework, and then what we can look at with you is a prioritization of what's been presented, that group of projects that are eligible for reprogramming, and look at how you want to allocate dollars within first that 100 million, and maybe if you want to look at a second tier, we could look at organizing that. This is a little different. When we've done this in the past, we've had a little more available capacity just going right in. And this time, we're going to have to look at what you want to maybe pull off the table and put subject to reprioritization. So we're glad to do that and facilitate that. We don't have a structure quite yet ready to give you because we're sort of looking at what dollar amount to put on the table. The way we did it last time is we gave you a dollar amount to allocate projects against, because that sort of gave you a reality check on how far you could go, not just projects you liked. So it was a combination of what you liked, but also what you could afford. And so I'd like to give you something along those lines. We don't have that fully laid out. We wanted to give you sort of the reality of where we are versus with an updated financial model first. And then we've still got to go through one more category of projects, like the emergency public safety realm. That won't take long. And then we'll move into how you want to prioritize projects moving forward.
Because this is base level. No change.
This is your baseline. Yeah.
The baseline.
Mm-hmm.
We've got, massive impact fee changes that we're considering. And just looking at the examples on the, that we've been given, and the 3 and 4 times more impact fees that those developments would be paying. And then, I'm trying to balance those examples where we're going to be charging 3 and 4 times more impact fees, and what is that going to do to this, to the situation? I know we want to.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Let's be conservative.
Mm-hmm.
Let's tighten the belt. Let's work under this assumption. But at the same time, we're also saying we have to have these impact fees, or else we can't fund the roads. I'm trying to draw the line between. Here's where we are now, but where could we go where do we think we're going with those impact fees? Is that the full $1 billion in roads? Is that what you've backed into? And this may be a different conversation for the impact fee discussion, but you see what I'm saying? The impact fees, is that going to give us the full $1 billion worth of roads or $700 million worth of roads? I guess
Yeah, we
Does that
have,
make sense?
we have not projected that out entirely because that hasn't happened yet. So
Understood, but
it
I'm
would
just
help you, it would help you absorb significant portions of that, but likely not all of it.
Yeah.
Especially because the way that is driven so much by timing.
Understood, yeah.
Yeah, so
It
it's,
could be 20 years.
but it is part of the formula.
All right, thank you.
Last question, you don't have to answer it necessarily today, but you said what's appropriate to reprioritize. Would love to just understand the criteria for how you're defining what would be appropriate to reprioritize and whether or not we all agree with that
Yeah,
appropriateness.
Let's go back to, I think, slides 24 and 25. That might give you a sense. What we just did is assessed projects that have not gotten that far along in the development timeline. And we have not acquired right away. We haven't done significant design and investment. And these are ones that you've maybe done a little bit of preliminary work, but you haven't gotten so far that you're really wasting significant investment. So that's what that category of around $100 million.
Below the gold line.
Yeah, and there's a couple slides that have that summarized. So that's our assessment of that. If you go above that line, then you have significant investments you've made that you're now no longer working off of.
Understood, but in
utilizing.
a couple of those cases, those investments pale in comparison to the overall project cost and whether that project is needed or not. So I still think there's some things that may be worth discussion that cross that line. But that, we can call it a night on this.
And we can certainly revisit that in a little more detail if you like, even next meeting, to walk through that. It's not a huge list, and but we can certainly give you a sense of that. And there's a combination of what we've already invested, or if we've got grant dollars involved, et cetera, or we're really on the cusp of bidding it. Do you really want to
I think that
back
would-
out of those now? That's the kind of thing.
I think that
I
would
won't
be
say the
important.
McEwen word, but
If we've got a spreadsheet that actually details that out, when you're talking about grant dollars, investment dollars, where we are in that, go ahead.
So
Mike.
we will get you the detailed project sheets. What we have done in the past is to outline the 37 projects.
those are
by
in here,
funding
but we can
source.
give you more of a summary.
But we'll
level.
refine it to the categories that I presented tonight, so you can see that sort of cost benefit. What are you giving up in potential external funding for each of these, or where it doesn't exist at all and it's completely on the internal or city funds?
So if we were to do this alternative district funding, the district funding models that we're going to be looking into, the TIF that I mentioned last time, that didn't want to raise impact fees until we really explored these other models, which a lot of these projects in the southeast quadrant primarily, I think those could go into that. So I feel the same way about this. We've got to find some other ways it's a part of our budget goals, is finding alternative sources to pay for this stuff. Because these are people, across the whole city, including development, but a lot of it, as we know, is coming from residents, sales tax and property tax and all the rest. And, we've got to find out more creative ways. It's not going to be the only picture, or the only tool that we have, but it's not going to replace everything. But we're sitting here, we only have $16 million left, and we're doing half of the road projects. Costs have gone up. It's not our fault. Costs have gone up tremendously. But we better get creative. And those districts can knock out some of these big projects in that area and really deliver projects in the other parts of the city that the residents are wanting. So I can't emphasize enough, and I know you're working with folks, but we got to look at and I'm not even going to say the TIF word because we'll start defining it in all different ways, but we got to have some people here who understand it, who can explain it to us, or you all can do that, and then let's do it. Because this is not, we are not going to deliver what citizens want with this plan, quite frankly. We're going to have a lot of roads left unbuilt. If we're not honest with ourselves about that, then we're not doing the citizens a favor. We got to get creative, or else we're going to be in a heap of hurt.
I totally hear you on that, and that is
Don't you-
that
do
is
you
part of it. I
agree
agree
with
on that, but it is also none of those are magic bullets. Those all involve issuing debt, taking risk, and what the timing is on the return of that in terms of what development generates the repayment stream. And so that's
I'm just saying.
That all
we get-
fits into a very similar financial model. It is a different source, but it's not remarkably different than how you structure this.
Very good.
If you think, yeah.
You're right.
Any questions on the calendar?
There is 1 month that has no April, November. There's no CIC and/or budget. Is that on purpose?
That is true because you combine November and December budget for sure. And CIC usually pairs with your planning commission, and you combine November and December planning commission. Yeah.